what we are going to listen is that demystifying myths and misconceptions on a COVID-19 vaccine. And then this also will be presented from a very scientific approach. And then next to that, towards lifting COVID-19 vaccine threat and restrictions. And of course, in this particular session itself, the third presentation towards enhancing availability and access to COVID-19 vaccination. Again, we come back to role of faith-based organizations taking or giving us certain examples and experiences that also will be shared. So we shall start with Dr. Alex Tang from Monash University in Malaysia. Dr. Alex.
Well, I bring you greetings from the Christian in churches in Malaysia. And it's great to be part of this consultation. Okay, today I want to share mainly on what is the scientific basis on COVID vaccination. Okay, and basically, I just want to highlight what some of the areas. I will not be able to cover everything because it's a vast subject. So I want to just highlight certain areas on what are the scientific basis? How do we approach the COVID vaccination program? And we start with some facts. To date, yesterday was 491, almost 500,000 new cases. Okay, and confirmed cases about 188. There are about 4 million deaths. But the good news is that about 3.4 billion doses of the vaccine has been given. Okay, so to start with, I'm sure you know there are 4 different basic types of vaccine. The first is a viral vaccine, which is the inactivated or attenuated. And this is the common vaccine that we have been using. You know, in our children's immunization, we use inactivated or attenuated. Inactivated is that we kill the bacteria or the virus, or attenuated, make it very weak. Then you have the protein-based virus vaccine, which is actually pieces of proteins. Then you have the viral vector and the nucleic acid. So you see that this is actually SARS-CoV-2. The virus is like that. And the main thing we are interested in is the spike protein. That is where all the vaccines are targeting. And the SARS-CoV-2 is actually very closely related to the SARS virus. Yeah, you may call it a cousin. That's why it's SARS-CoV-2. Okay, so if you look at the different vaccine, you find that the virus vaccine, as I said, is the weakened one. The one that is a weakened one that is very common. The protein base is that if you take parts and parcel of the virus, the COVID SARS-2 virus, and then we make a vaccine out of it. The vector vaccine are actually very new technology. Okay, in other words, we just embed part of the RNA of the COVID into a vector, like a common cold, and then this infect a human with it. So the vector carries the infection into the human, and the human body reacts to the spike protein. Then you have the nucleic acid one, which is the latest, okay, the Pfizer and the Moderna, where we actually create part of the RNA. Okay, the RNA is one of the nucleotides, mixed out of nucleotide we create in the lab. That means no actual virus was used, and this was injected. That's why this is such a new technology. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about is some of the concerns about the COVID-19 vaccine, especially as we deal with a lot of questions. And one of the first and major questions is that the vaccine was developed very fast. Normal vaccine takes about 10 to 15 years to develop because they have to go through a preclinical trial, then phase 1, which is actually about 10 people or so, we take about 2-3 years. Then phase 2, we do the clinical one. We test about 100 people, but we select the people this time and the dosage. Phase 3, we take about 1,000 people. No, we test them with the dosage and see it work. Then we wait 1 or 2 years for approval, and then we go for manufacturing. Okay, so altogether 10 to 15 years. So the major thing that we are worried about is that the COVID vaccine came out in about 6 months to 12 months. So is there something wrong? Were they shortcut taken? Well, let me tell you that when we begin to be aware, the doctors are beginning to aware that there is an outbreak in China in October, November, December 2019. The world is actually alert, WHO is already alert. In January 2020, okay, during Wuhan, the scientists in China were able to synthesize the genome of the virus in the beginning, in January 2020. And the wonderful thing is that the scientists uploaded the genome onto the internet. So the whole world, now all the scientists in the world knows the exact genome of the SARS-CoV-2. That means within in January itself. And in January itself, in fact, when I received the genome, a scientific group, okay, were able to create the vaccine within 2 days. Okay, they developed the vaccine within 2 days because nowadays we have the technology to develop the vaccine within 2 days, but they are unable to test it and market it. That's why they combine with Pfizer. Yeah, so that's where the testing comes in. And the technology has been there since, remember SARS in 2003? Okay, SARS was a major earth shaker. Okay, even though it's caused about 8,000 patients and about 774 deaths, it spread so rapidly that it scares everybody. Okay, Singapore, Hong Kong, China are hit badly. And because of that, we were expecting another SARS-like outbreak since 2003. So actually what we are putting in place now for the present COVID was actually prepared in 2003 to counter another SARS. And the research has gone forward to produce a vaccine for SARS. And not only that, but between 2003, there were a few outbreaks that is called concern. Number 2002, the avian flu, the 2014, the Ebola outbreak. And then in 2016, the MERS COVID outbreak, which we think could be another SARS. But thank God, it was limited to only a few countries. But with the new technology, we are able to synthesize and create. So why did the vaccine was produced so early? Because one thing, we have the technology. Second thing is that we have, or second point is that we have the resources and we have the protocol now. But the third and most important is that US ex-President Trump started Operation Warp Speed, which put in $2.2 billion into finding a vaccine for COVID. So the third point is money. And money drives the research. Okay, because they are money, they are able to do large-scale research. So for example, in phase 1, they used to do it on 10 people. Now they're able to do it on 100,000. Phase 2, go up to 2,000, 5,000. Phase 3, we are talking about a test being done on 30,000, 50,000 people. So there's a large body of data coming in. And because of the urgency of COVID And because of the large number of vaccine required for the trial, they started building factories because no lab is ever produced 10,000 doses for the trial. So they actually started building factories to produce a vaccine even from the beginning of phase 2 and phase 3 trial. So by the time the vaccines are ready, ending end of phase 3 and showing that it produces results, the factories are also ready to produce. And that is the reason why we have the vaccine so early. It's not because they are cutting corners, they are trying to make the buck and all that. It's because of the reality of the new scientists. And as Dr. Matthew says, there were about 150 vaccines that were put on trial of possible candidates, which actually narrowed down to 47 that actually reached human trials. So that means a lot of it were rejected. Even the Merck one was rejected. So in the end, we end up with only a few vaccines that's been used today. So the not so good one, would not make the grade. So that means be assured that the vaccine that you receive that have been used today are approved, have undergone stringent tests, and approved for use. How about safety in terms of the vaccine use? Now we're talking about, in the beginning, we are worried about the safety, and when Pfizer came out, we were worried about the anaphylactic shock, which is actually about initially say was 4.5 per million, then it was turned out to be 2.5 per million. And now that we have 8.6 billion doses given, people don't even talk about it anymore. So in terms of safety, the vaccine, especially the RNA vaccine like Pfizer and Moderna, are relatively safe. Okay, and then I'll talk more about side effect later. Now, what about the efficacy or an effectiveness of vaccine? Again, we have about 8.6 billion doses. Okay, when we use the word efficacy and effectiveness, we have to be careful how we use the word. Okay, efficacy is the results that you get when we test it in the lab in control cases. Effectiveness is what is done in real life. Okay, when you give the vaccine to the real population, that is effectiveness. So in the beginning, in December, January this year, we're talking about the efficacy. But now we have enough real life data to talk about effectiveness of the vaccine. So, and I think the Israel gave us a very, very good example of the effectiveness of the vaccine, because Israel was the first country that received full Pfizer coverage. Okay, so that means a majority of the population was vaccinated. And you see that these are the real life data, it's the effectiveness that the number of cases actually comes down, and the number of hospital admission came down. And this is also supported by data coming from the UK and from US, that the vaccines are effective, that the vaccine is actually useful. Okay. And more so, even against the variants, you find that here, the Pfizer vaccine, the AstraZeneca in UK, okay, they actually, the efficacy went down to 80%. Okay, in Israel, we are still looking at the reason why it went down to 60%. Okay, but all of them have a milder form. Okay, all of them have instead of a deadly hospitalization and ventilation, most of those who are vaccinated are actually protected against a more serious form. You find that this is the data from UK, that the variant death, it does causes infection, but it doesn't cause death. Okay, how about the side effect? I mean, there are common side effects. No medicine, no vaccine is without side effects. So these are the one. But we are worried about the AstraZeneca blood clots. Okay, the thrombosis and the thrombocytopenic syndrome. Actually, the numbers are very low. Okay, we were talking about 7 per million vaccinated women. Okay, and we find it's actually higher in younger people. Okay, but if we look at it in this way, the risk of people dying from the thrombosis and the thrombolytic is actually very much. Okay, the blue is the people dying from COVID. The orange or the beige is the people who are dying, who are actually dying from the blood clot. So it's actually very low. Unfortunately, the social media has been playing up. Okay, that is such a major factor. Then suddenly now data became to be published in the social media about myocarditis. That means inflammation of the heart in Pfizer, which we actually know all along, that in the younger group, there are quite a number of people, children or young people who receive the Pfizer vaccine and have myocarditis. Okay, so it is a known fact. We're not hiding it. But the interesting fact is that all of them actually went home. They didn't die from myocarditis. And again, if you look at the risk assessment, you find that people who get vaccinated and has myocarditis compared to those who are hospitalized due to the COVID vaccine. So the risk is actually very low. How about the use of human cell lines? I know that there are some Christians who are very concerned that we use human cell lines. Cell lines are actually created from stem cells or some of the human cells, and then it's generated. That means it's actually immortal in a way. You can keep them growing for generation after generation. And there are only two human cell lines. Okay, one created in 1972 and one created in 1985. Both these cell lines are from terminated fetus. Okay, medical termination, not illegal or non-medical termination. And the cell line has been used and has been used for the last 20, 30 years. Okay, and not all vaccines are created in this cell line. Okay, only AstraZeneca, CanSino, Sino, and Russian and Janssen. So actually, the cell line was, the cells has been there. Okay, it wasn't specially made for that. The long-term immunity, we do not have enough data. Our data is about up to 9 months or so. But we know that up to 9 months, people are still immune. That means most vaccines, okay, they only monitor survey up to 6 months. So far, we are doing good. That means the people who have been vaccinated remain immune and have antibodies. How about the variant? That's what we worry about. The Alpha variant, or the initially called UK and South Africa, Brazil, India. Now you have to understand that in RNA virus, okay, they mutate. Okay, they mutate almost every other day. That's normal. That's why in the flu vaccine, okay, the flu vaccine have to be changed every 6 months because the flu virus mutate. That's why we have Northern Hemisphere vaccine, Southern Hemisphere vaccine. So if I'm a practicing doctor, so I know that we have to change the vaccine every 6 months. And I'm not surprised that the COVID RNA mutates. Okay, so we have been looking out for this, and we find that the alpha, beta, gamma, and delta are what we call the variants of interest and variants of concern. Okay, so you find that what is mutated is the spike cells. Okay, there are 3 proteins in the spike cells, and the Delta variant is actually have 3 mutations in the spike cells. And as I mentioned earlier, that our vaccine is all heading for the spike cells. So, but this variant, okay, is very infectious. The Delta variant is very infectious, okay, because I think basically virus is survival, okay, and you want to, as a virus, you want to spread as easily as possible, but you don't want to kill the host, because it doesn't make sense for the virus to kill the host, because if the virus kills the host, then they cannot spread. So they mutate to spread easily, but do not kill the host that easily. So you see that the Delta variant is spreading very easily, and they tend to spread now among the younger people. Okay, that's why you see that the cases in Israel. Okay, we still do not know the reason why. Okay, I mean the obvious reason is that you vaccinated all the adults, so now the children get infected. But that could be one of the reasons. Okay, but I think the good news you must be aware is that most of the vaccine available are actually effective against the variants. Okay, so it's not the end of the world, so don't panic. Okay, just because there are variants, we say, oh, vaccines are no longer. In fact, you find that even against the South African variant, okay, even Pfizer has 62%. And the other thing is that because production of RNA vaccine is actually very much easier than the other type, you can actually manipulate the genome against the variant. So that means we have version 2, version 3. So that means then as we progress, we can actually tweak the vaccine to adjust for the variants. So that's a good news. So I just want to end by saying that we need to do appropriate measures. Okay, I think that's very important. Okay, there's so much politics involved. Okay, politicians are milking the thing in, companies, big pharma are milking anything, are coming in, and everybody is getting involved, so it's become so politicized. But basically, what you need to do is to test, to trace and isolate. Test, trace, and isolate. I think that's the one thing. Now, the other thing that we need to rethink is now WHO has admitted finally, okay, that the virus is airborne, not droplet. In the beginning, we were saying that it's droplet, so that's why wash hand, 3 feet, 6 feet, because the droplet only cover that distance. Okay, I think that is a thing that we need to address, is that it's not droplet, it's airborne. That's why mask is necessary. That's why you need to have a ventilated room. Okay, that you need to switch off your aircon or install HEPA filters for your aircon. Okay, otherwise the whole room, okay, the whole room is not just a person that's 3 feet away, will have the virus. Okay. That's why mask is always important, right? Mask, and avoid super spreader events. And vaccinate. So you see that different countries have approved different vaccine, and this is a sort of estimate on how many months it would take for them to reach some level of herd immunity. Okay, I shall end here, and I'm happy to take any question. Thank you.